Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. We are so honored to have our great speaker, Michael Lacasse from Canada, to provide a presentation titled Canadian Research in Built Environment, Climate Initiatives and Partnerships at the National Research Council of Canada. And we are so honored to have Dr. Lacasse, who is a senior research officer at the National Research Council, NRC, and also is the team leader of the FSP team, part of NRC's Built Environment Envelope and Material Research Unit. And Dr. Lacasse has more than 30 years of experience and career at NRC. He has fostered research collaborators with the local academia as well as internationally. He is a widely recognized expert in the durability of building materials and building elements and moisture management of building enclosures, as well as being the board member of the CIB. He is also a coordinator for CIB's Working Commission W080 on the durability of building materials and components, as well as the chair of ISO Technical Committee Design Life of Built Structures. Additionally, he is a founding member of CIB TG97, Nature-Based Solutions for Climate Resilient Building, and is to coordinate the activities of CIB W040. He has played an important role in industry, having influenced code and standards developing in respect to resistance to deteriorations of building assemblies, and where he has worked for many years. We are so honored to have Dr. Lacasse and looking forward to his presentation about this very important topic. Michael, please.
Rajad, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And really, when I talk about the climate research initiatives and the partnerships at the National Research Council, the types of partnerships I'm talking about are not simply with our local academia, but more importantly, the types of partnerships we make when we attend CIB activities. And the idea here is to make the link between what we're undertaking at the National Research Council and what we're focused on, and its link to CIB activities, as well as demonstrate, for example, how that might play out across Canada and whom else plays a role in all of this. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the activities of CIB in Canada. Thereafter, give you also a brief overview of the National Research Council and the Construction Research Center to give a little context to this talk. And then we'll get into the nub of what we're doing at the National Research Council. It's all about Canada and climate change and adapting and mitigating the effects of climate change on the built environment. How does NRC respond to all of that? Through various initiatives, as it were, research platforms that we've put into place. And the focus, of course, for me is on the resilient side of things, Climate Resilient Built Environment Initiative. So I'll go a little more in detail than that, but I'll also talk about, if only briefly, opportunities for collaboration. And of course, we're all very interested in collaborating with our colleagues from around the globe, but in particular those who just south of the border to Canada might have a much, how should I say, the climate being more similar to other reaches of Canada, at least the northern parts of the United States. So here we go. So you see United States just south of the border, as it were, and the group of people, activities, various universities and organizations participate in CIB activities, those located in Quebec, those located in Ontario, and just one located in New Brunswick. Those are essentially, so far, the extent of CIB activities in Canada. And if we look a little more closely at all of this, we can see, for example, that for the various working groups or working commissions in which that have activities in Canada, these include W80, W40, TG97, and as well W121 at the University of New Brunswick, and as well others universities in Canada, including Concordia, University of Montreal, University of Quebec in Montreal, University of Sherbrooke, and so on. So it's not as wide and expansive collaborations as we would like, and it's certainly something that one needs to work at to further develop. But a good number of these people we at the NRC collaborate with. Given that, for example, we've been involved in activities or research activities on heat and moisture transfer in building envelopes for several decades. And so we have close cooperation. NRC has close cooperation with Concordia University and the University of Sherbrooke, and as well when it comes to nature-based solutions for buildings and communities, which is the task group that we had put together just a few years ago, just prior to COVID, as it turns out. We put all of that together with our colleagues at Concordia University and others across Canada that had interest in participating. So these are just the Canadian participants for TG97, but there are participants around the globe. So so at the basis of our collaboration with CIB, of course, is our own research program. And what is the National Research Council? What does construction research? What does the Construction Research Center do? Well, we have a few resources at our disposal. 4,000 personnel, $1 billion worth of annual expenditures, various locations across the country. But more importantly, we collaborate with many small and medium-sized enterprises, various different companies, so many different colleges and universities, and more importantly, the federal departments for which we undertake quite a bit of work. And right now, the federal departments, as it were, are the ones that are underwriting our initiative in climate change. And so here are the various divisions of the National Research Council. You can see in the engineering division, construction, amongst two others. But we also work with other engineering divisions in issues related to climate change. And NRC construction, the construction portion of all of that, these are the general areas of activities in which we endeavor: building envelope and materials, sustainable resilient buildings and communities, building performance, and as well fire safety and technical and testing services that we offer. A lot of the research that we do is in the basis of, it forms the basis of developing the necessary information that goes into building regulations, specifications, the national master specifications that the Government of Canada uses to specify new construction of government buildings and the like, and other building regulations, the National Building Code, which is useful for the entire country, and the National Energy Code for buildings that limits, for example, the type of greenhouse gases that that different buildings can have. So the national model construction codes include the National Building Code, the National Energy Code for building, the Fire Code, and the Plumbing Code. And so what are these model codes? And by the way, we developed the model codes, but the jurisdictions across Canada that are responsible for putting the code in place, they have the legal responsibility, and they adopt the code as even though we're responsible for developing it. They adopt the code and they enforce it, as it were. The codes, of course, they are regulatory instruments for the various provinces and territories. The provinces are those that have the jurisdiction to enact the code, and they provide the minimum acceptable requirements for construction, and as well, they allow for alternative solutions to construction and building. And so but these do not represent design manuals or guides of best practices. Those are instruments or publications that others put together, ourselves included. So the work on the National Building Code, the National Model Building Code, is well on its way to being published, as we're just on the cusp of putting it out. But what is in that code? What's of importance right now? Well, it's issues related to adaptation and mitigation of climate change. Apart from all the other elements, as you can see here, health and safety is a primary element of building codes, as perhaps you're probably aware. And performance-based solutions, fire protection and performance, these are all elements that have existed in the code before. But what hasn't to a great extent existed are issues related to climate change, either mitigation or adaptation. And so all of those elements are new to the 2025 code, and there'll be additional elements of being put in to the 2030 code as well that we're currently working on. So we're well in advance. So what about Canada and climate change? Well, perhaps in the United States, you've had a few examples of all of this lately, and you yourselves have been put to the test with a lot of excessive rainfall, as we have. But it's not simply rainfall; it's extreme heat events and other types of extreme events that are affecting our climate. The government of Canada is committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions below 2005 levels by 2030. Is it going to reach that target? I can't answer that question. It's supposed to be able to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. But to be able to do that, one needs to be able to have, given that buildings by and large contribute considerably to greenhouse gas emissions, one needs to have a plan to be able to get there. And it's not self-evident how all of this happens or is put together. So Canada's third highest source of greenhouse gas emissions is the built environment. And so one needs to take measures when constructing new buildings and the like, or any type of infrastructure, to reduce the embodied carbon, indeed the operational carbon going forward. So what has the government done? It's developed an adaptation strategy and adaptation action across the board. You can see here there's one can relate to all of that, but essentially it lays out a general program of activities and targets that one hopes to achieve in the future by developing resilient communities, resilient buildings, whilst maintaining the economy of the nation going forward. So that's Canada's National Adaptation Strategy. And trying to, in doing so, of course, we're trying to not simply reduce carbon usage and go carbon neutral in the future, but also we want to ensure that buildings are resilient to the effects of climate change. We need to connect the mitigation to the resilience strategy, as it were. And so we know, for example, that there are operational carbon emissions that are always an issue. We can always attempt to reduce the amount of carbon emissions by reducing space cooling in the summer and space heating in the winter for those locations in one's country where it's a heating climate. But there's so many other ways in which one can reduce carbon emissions, the embodied carbon emissions. One needs to first take all of that into account. And so how does one do that? When one realizes, for example, that a lot of money spent on adaptation measures will be returned in years ahead in direct and indirect benefits. At least that's the hope going forward. And a lot of these adaptation and emissions reductions can dramatically reduce the effects of climate change, as it were. At least that's what one anticipates. Ideally, of course, one is both obtaining resilient structures going forward and reducing the carbon footprint of new construction. And so this is our approach to mitigation and resiliency coming together to make a more sustainable future, if I can put it that way. So we need to be able to address these challenges and opportunity by focusing the resilient solutions to climate change, taking into consideration the life cycle carbon and cost of structures. Okay, so in other words, if we're thinking about resilient structures, one also needs to think about the embodied carbon that these new structures take in. We want to minimize that, and we want to minimize operational carbon going forward. So what is NRC's response to decarbonize the construction industry? It is exactly this. We've developed a research program where we hope to change the construction sector across the board at scale to decarbonize it. Okay, it's a wee bit of a challenge, which is why it's called the Challenge Program. Thank you very much. And the idea here is to position the construction sector to achieve these reduction targets, by 2050, these greenhouse gas reduction targets, and as well induce growth of Canada's cleaner construction technology. So we want to change the way in which construction is done by designing structures taking the carbon footprint and carbon intensity into consideration. And so that apparently will help Canada achieve its international commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the NRC's platform to decarbonize the construction sector at scale is over a 7-year period. As you can see, we're well into it, at least 2 years into it, or 2.5 years into it. And essentially, we're going to develop the skill sets for low carbon solution, whilst at the same time ensuring that the solutions that we develop are resilient to climate change. So we hope to, by doing so, not only transform the sector to take into consideration carbon, but also at the same time increase productivity, develop different types of jobs, achieve the greenhouse gas reduction targets, and so on. And the way we've suggested that this can be done is through the development of these research programs, these National Research Council platform research programs in 3 areas. One related to regulatory solutions, and these relate to the development of new codes, as I alluded to before. There's also the built environment, and we need to, well, we'll go into that in a little more detail, but these 3 elements here, the built environment and make the built environment low carbon, and to help manage all of that and increase productivity, the idea here is to entice the construction sector to improve its productivity through digitalization. So, so then here, for example, the low carbon regulatory area, we want to be able to deploy all of this, deploy the research outputs that we're going to be developing to permit decarbonization of the infrastructure, permit decarbonization of buildings in Canada, right across the board, and in so doing, develop new products and materials going forward. When we're looking at the Productivity Challenge program, this will enable Canada's construction sector to develop the tools needed to improve sector productivity whilst transforming the construction sector into a, as it says here, integrated digital ecosystem, an interesting term, to support the achievement of these decarbonization targets. And what does one mean by this integrated digital ecosystem? You've heard about building information modeling. It uses the intent here of using these the digital ecosystem, as it says here, is to reduce the time to bring designs forward. It's cost and time reductions that'll bring about reduced material waste. That'll take into consideration the fact that there is labor shortage. That will reduce the time for obtaining permits and undertaking inspections through digitization and so on. So there's various opportunities there. The next challenge program relates to the built environment, and the intent here is to implement a life cycle carbon optimized solutions and verified solutions going forward. But of course, these are also solutions that are resilient to climate change. So what about climate change? So here we are, we've looked at the low carbon aspect, but of course we need to be resilient to climate change. So these are the two elements that we're taking in consideration. And so with our partnership with Infrastructure Canada, we hope to integrate climate resilience into the guidance, standards, and building codes that we have in Canada. We have various partners to do this. Apart from Infrastructure Canada, we have support from other initiatives across the Government of Canada. Various other departments are supporting our initiative. And these are the research areas in climate resilience that we're currently involved in. Now, you notice I tagged these areas of climate resilient research areas with the various groups in which we are involved in CIB, be that TG97, which takes into consideration not simply nature-based solutions, but also understands what extreme heat events are about, or indeed extreme rain events that bring about flooding. But this is all part of TG97. When one talks about extreme wind and wind-driven rain events, one's looking at the types of things that one considers in areas related to W40 and W80. W40 being heat transfer in the building envelope, heat and moisture transfer in the building envelope, and W80 being related to predicting the service life of building materials and components, hence durability. So there's all sorts of guidance documents that have been published up to now on the basis of work that has been done in the past 5 years. Be that, for example, a national guide for wildland, urban interface wildfires, be that coastal flood risk assessment guidelines, be that practical guidance for drainage systems to reduce basement flood risk, and so on. These are all available. So then, what are the opportunities for collaboration? We have interest in undertaking case studies, research, testing, and so on. What's a prime collaborator for us? Those people that participate in CIB activities. They give us a global perspective, and they help us, and our participation in CIB helps us move this particular agenda forward. And so in opportunities for collaboration with regards to the low carbon built environment, we're looking at life cycle assessment practices, performance-based carbon emission benchmarks, and various odds and ends of other demonstration projects, low and net zero embodied carbon construction materials, and what have you. When it comes to digitization opportunity and programming, we're looking at low carbon regulatory options, digital design and the retrofit of buildings, and digital tools and platforms for end-to-end transformations. These using, of course, building information models, building information and management models. When it comes to climate resilience of the built environment, the opportunities for collaboration relate to nature-based solutions for mitigating the effects of climate change. And this relates to TG97, and we already have several partners in TG97. We're looking at protection systems against extreme weather. This is something along the lines of what CIB W80 focuses on. As one of our outputs, for example, is related to service life of different elements, prediction and diagnostics for aging of the built environment. Another focus of W80, where we're trying to get an idea of what information is currently available in regards to the projected or the estimated, the reference service life of different building components and elements. And technologies for building and rehabilitation and increasing the service life. This all relates to W80 as well. So you can see that there's a linkage between the types of opportunities for collaboration and our linkages to CIB. So if you have an interest in obtaining additional information on the various CIB working commissions and task groups in which we're involved, we certainly would have interest in receiving your requests for information. There are also various other contacts that are available here related to our ongoing programs at the National Research Council. And so these are the people that are overseeing these activities. And these are some of the links to climate change programming, both related to decarbonization and climate resilient buildings. You can obtain them here. And thank you very much for your time. I really, truly appreciate your having taken the time to listen to this very brief overview of our collaboration and activities in Canada as related to the CIB. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate it. One wonderful presentation. Any question from the audience? And you can put it in the chat box or raise your hand to open your mic. And so as our audience getting ready, I have some question, Michael, for you. Thank you so much for a great presentation. One of my questions is that how we can collaborate with NRC. Is there any funding mechanism that people in United States can find a collaborator in Canada and apply together for conducting joint research?
Well, I don't know that there's any ready monies specifically for collaborations, but if the collaboration, for example, were to touch upon any of the current research platforms that I described, the decarbonization or the climate resilient buildings, either of those platforms would consider the extent to which they might underwrite and fund such a collaboration. So, you know, is there a ready source of monies? There are monies available for collaboration. But of course, all of that, how should I say, one needs to make a proposal much the same way, for example, that one would propose collaborating with CIB and so on. One of the straightforward ways, of course, of collaborating and getting a broad sense of what's going on is joining some of the CIB working groups and task groups. Yes, David Devine.
Yes, thank you. I was curious, you started early on with the Canadian building code, for lack of a better word, and you
Yes.
referred to how the provinces then adopted that by reference, similar, in the states here. But there's also a lot of jurisdiction at the local level, counties and cities. And I'm curious, provinces in Canada are huge compared to states, and I'm thinking, many of the Canadian cities are relatively close to the border. For towns and communities that are far away, does that province jurisdiction, or does it feed into a more local level as things are far away, or some folks kind of far enough away that the jurisdictions sort of may not really have a place?
Okay. So if the depending on the size, typically speaking, the province will take in hand the responsibility for overseeing what's going on, or overseeing the application of the building code. No matter where that, how should I say, no matter um, um, how far away the various communities might be. In very large communities and urban centers, by and large, the urban center itself may take on that responsibility from the province. So the city of Vancouver, for example, would enact the national building code. The city in the province of British Columbia. But for those small localities very far away, or out, then it's a local building inspector that has to make the decisions, if indeed they have that type of expertise available. So the implementation of all of this is, of course, it's affected by whether or not experts are close at hand for overseeing new buildings. But if one asks oneself, where are most of the new buildings constructed? They're constructed in larger urban centers. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It certainly does. Thank you. I mean, it's kind of similar, I think, here in the States. Even I, you I live in a relatively large community city here in Indiana, but some nearby counties that, population might just be 30 or 50,000, there's might not even be a building department in the county.
no, well, that's right.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's right.
Similar. So thank you.
And who knows? Then do I know explicitly how that's taken care of? I don't. But I do know that there's any number of uh, very disparate locations across Canada. I mean, you'd think, for example, of the far north of Canada, and only in the larger communities would they have a building inspector. I take it.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Mr. Devine, for your question. More questions? Yes, please.
Sure, sure. As we are waiting for more question, so I have a couple of questions. I start asking them, and other people, please raise your hand or put it in the chat box, chat section. I will read it to our speaker. Michael, how about opportunities from climate change? Because based on some of the articles I have read, Canadians should be very happy for changes in climate, that weather is getting warmer, so more land become livable, and more resources you can extract. Even if the polar ice is melted, there will be new transportation route that will be open. You can have new ports up there in the north. And so how about the opportunities? Is there any plan to exploit them, or?
I don't know of any opportunities. I think everyone looks at the downside of having climate change. But I can't disagree with you when one says there's an upside in Canada for climate change, and that very well may spawn additional immigration to the country. If only because I think the type of climate change we're experiencing is really quite benign in comparison to so many other locations across the globe that are suffering from extreme extreme heat or other extreme climate events. Witness, for example, the recent typhoon in Shanghai. Very destructive, very difficult, and all of those extremely, well, for gosh sake, I was thinking of Phoenix. Phoenix this year, as I recall, had over 100 days of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This is incredible. So I do wish you all well.
Thank you so much. Yes, also in Florida and Miami, they have lots of problems. And my next question is related to mitigation adoption strategies. Actually, one of the studies we did was about DOTs, Department of Transportation. What should they do? Should they go after mitigations or adaptations? Because mitigation, you say that if I try to go for zero carbon, maybe other countries don't do that. And because the climate is kind of shared, so maybe
yes,
my
they
investment...
need to absolutely think immediately about adaptation and develop their adaptation strategies, whilst at the same time contributing to the overall benefit of around the globe by considering what needs to be done to mitigate the effects. But I mean, in my mind, there's no doubt adaptation is something that needs to be put in place. Otherwise, life is going to get very difficult indeed.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we also found, that many people believe that, okay, we should design our culverts differently. We should design our bridges differently because of these extreme events, that flooding and other things that are happening. And so the adaptation is also important. We should consider it in design. We are designing for the next 50, 30, or maybe 20 years. So we should consider all of these practices. Thank you so much, Michael. Any other comments, questions from our audience?
I was going to, if I might, Behzad, if there are no other questions, I don't know if there are, but I might invite my colleague Zara Jandagian to talk a bit about her work in nature-based solutions. Zara, off the cuff, would you say a few words about your recent activities related to nature-based solutions? Now, I know you've recently called a meeting of the task group to be held in October. Perhaps you can tell everyone listening here a bit about that and what you hope to achieve in the coming years.
Of course. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate the presentation. That was great. Thank you for sharing our research activities with everyone here. Well, the task force TG97 is on nature-based solutions on buildings and communities. Dr. Michael Lacasse first initiated this task group, and I am co-chairing it with Professor Huagi from Concordia University. We are going to have the virtual meeting on October 21st, on Monday, 8 a.m. ETS on, let's say, Eastern time. And the reason for this call is because we wanted to share with you what we are doing at National Research Council Canada in terms of looking at the nature and using nature to reduce the effects of urban heat island and urban flooding in Canadian settings. So for urban heat islanding, we are going to present 4 of our active projects. And to reduce the urban flooding, we are going to talk about 3 projects that we are leading right now. In this collaboration, we are working with cities across Canada. We are with 8 cities across Canada. We are working with stakeholders and clients. And the main reason for this call is actually because we wanted to hear from you what you are doing in your own communities, in your own buildings to reduce the effects of heat waves and flooding in your cities, what nature-based solutions you are applying, and whether you have any guidelines-based management practices that you are using yourself or your communities to reduce the effects of climatic changes and global warming. And we are looking for collaboration. We are looking for international collaboration, of course. So Behzad, that's probably going to answer your question. Yeah, we have the funding, but not, well, it should be a win-win collaboration, let's say, to be honest. So
Behzad, please join on Monday.
Looking forward to that. Looking forward to that.
Good.
And
there
Zara,
you go, Zara.
If you can share it in the message box, so we can share it with the whole
Good
team.
idea. Excellent.
That would be great. And we had a wonderful attendees. I mean, 27 or more than 30 people we had at some time of the presentation. I think we had a good attendance. We will share it with our team. I will ask help from Paul to share it with our participants. And looking forward to that. We will definitely attend and looking forward to collaboration. And when Michael was presenting, I saw your name. I searched it. I found that you're in University of Toronto and you're doing research in that area. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks, Michael, for this opportunity. I am actually standing on his, well, he's backing and supporting my research and my work. So I'm benefiting from his work that initiated on nature-based solutions. The thing is that I'm on another system, but what I can do is that I can send you and everyone in this call, I do have your emails, which, yeah. I can send the invitation, the link, the time of the meeting, and also the agenda that we're going to have. In this meeting, we are also going to hear from Germany, Australia, and Canada and US professors and collaborators who are working on nature-based solutions. So they are also going to share what they are doing in their own communities. So I believe that's going to be a very beneficial collaboration. It's going to be a 90 minutes focus meeting, and we're going to have a 20-minute discussion, and we're going to open the floor for a free discussion, question and answers. Yeah, so we're looking forward to seeing everybody in that call.
We too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michael. That's wonderful. So that's a great initiating collaboration. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we are looking forward to have as many attendance from our members. Even maybe we can share it with some of our faculties who might be interested. I will coordinate with Cole to see that if we can share it with them, because there are people who are conducting research in climate change, adaptation, even bio-inspired design here that they're trying to use the nature and improve the quality of life. That's great. Thank you so much, everyone.
I have a question for you, Bazan.
Sure.
So architectural engineering, is there at Purdue, is there architectural engineering?
We have multiple programs. One of them is civil engineering that we are in, and we have construction group. We also have a construction management technology that they also have a architecture branch there. But I think we also have maybe architectural engineering yes, we definitely have people who are architect.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure, yes. And I'm sure Mark can provide better about the history, and because there are some changes, some departments merge with some other groups and things like that. I'm sure Mark would be able to provide a better overview of all of the departments that we have on campus.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Michael, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Zahra, for follow-up and providing the connection. We had a wonderful meeting. We learned a lot, and looking forward to collaborating with our colleagues in Canada.
Please.
So thank you so much. So if there is,
we are in the same region, so.
Yes, yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to that. And actually, the climate change, its impact, especially on transportation, was one of the topics that we had some small internal funding to do research on risk communication with people, even the human factor side of it, how to change behavior. We have lots of interest in all of those areas. I think we had a great seminar today. And we will post the video online also for everyone to see, so perhaps it will get more views online and attracts more potential collaboration. And so I think we can end the meeting here. We thank our presenters. Really appreciate it for one wonderful job that you have done. And thank you so much to also Paul and Cole for coordinating the meeting. And have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much, Bazad. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Cole.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
And thank you so much, everyone.
Well.
Have a wonderful day.